What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Faze and welcome back to my channel. As you can see by the title, I am now a qualified maths teacher, but this video is well overdue. I was meant to make it in June, maybe July, and it's now the middle of August, but there's no time like the present. So I'm here to tell you exactly how my experience of doing the PGCE at Cambridge was, getting my QTS, and all the things I've been through up to this year, getting my qualification to be a maths teacher. So back in December 2024, I made a video when I was halfway through my PGCE, mainly to tell you guys about why I chose to do a PGCE, because I was coming from a chemical engineering background, the application process for those that are looking to do PGCEs, if I recommend it, what was my experiences, etc. So I won't go over the things I covered in that video. I'm going to leave the link in the description and here, maybe somewhere on the screen, so you can go and click and have a watch of that. So in this video, I'm mainly going to talk about what it's like to be a teacher. I have a lot of experience over the past year teaching maths in a secondary school, so I have a lot of insights. I'm going to talk about the structure of the PGCE at Cambridge. I'm going to talk about some of my highlights, some of the challenges, and again, some information and tips for you guys if you're thinking about doing a PGCE. So let's get straight into it. If you haven't already, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'm nearly at 1,000 followers. Hopefully by the time this goes out, I might already be there. But thank you to those that are supporting the channel so far. All right, so I think it makes sense to first explain what is a PGCE, because that's the qualification I came out with. It's a postgraduate certificate in education, and the QTS is a qualified teacher status. Now, my qualification was both, so it was a PGCE with QTS. The PGCE is a degree or qualification that gives you a better insight into the technicalities and the intricacies of teaching. Now, the last part, qualified teaching status, is what allows you to go and teach in schools. Okay, so you can teach in the UK, you can teach internationally, and you can teach secondary school and above. At Cambridge, it's structured. We have subject studies, professional studies, and we have our professional placements. I spoke a little bit about this before, but the subject studies is your time where you're learning how to teach. So that's your seminars or your lectures or your classes where you normally have a lecturer and they're teaching you the different aspects of teaching. So this part focuses on the teaching and learning of your subject. Mine was maths, and this is basically to make me a better maths teacher. So the competencies, I need to know about the curriculum, and I need to know about what kind of approaches teachers have to enable students to learn better. To support us with this, we had some essays and assignments, and at the end we had an 8,000 word dissertation to conclude our submissions. Now, the professional studies is different to the subject studies. This one is across teaching for all subjects. So it's more about pastoral stuff, learning how to deal with students with special education needs, behavior and learning. So all of the stuff that teachers go through outside of their own subject, but we still need to be equipped with. And then another part was our professional placement. Now, this was the hands-on experience where we are the teacher standing up in front of a class, teaching students across a sequence of lessons. And that was I would say the bulk of what the PGCE is. So you need to be able to, when you're ready to get your first job as a teacher, you need to say, I've had the experience, I've had tests in the classroom. So when I get into my job, I'm not going to see things for the first time. I'm going to have the experiences. I'm going to be able to call on my knowledge and things that I've been through over the course of the year to know how to deal with situations. So all three of those aspects of the structure, the subject studies, professional studies, and professional placement, were all equally as important as each other. I won't say equally, actually. I think the placement is definitely the most important. I think you just need that experience being in front of a classroom. There's nothing that teaches you like doing it. Actually having that experience in front of a classroom shows you things about yourself that you won't really be able to learn by just learning how to teach, if that makes sense. But those aspects are essentially the structure of our 1-year PGCE course. Now, my experience of the actual PGCE, it was demanding, it was tough. It's a lot and it's a full-time course. So trying to do other things on the side is difficult if you're not that good at managing your time. I think I managed my time quite well. I was still able to run my business. I was still able to make content. I think this was my most consistent year making content. You know, I did a lot of campaigns with the DFE for their Get Into Teaching campaigns. I was still able to do powerlifting, so I did my competitions on the side. So I was able to still do and live my life in the same way I was doing it before I started the PGCE course in my undergraduate. But it is definitely demanding. You have a lot of planning of lessons to do. And if you don't use your time well, you're going to get to class and be like, I don't know what to do. I don't have the resources. You need to set aside time for your assignment. So everyone on the PGCE course in Cambridge specifically, I can't talk for other institutions or other providers, but in Cambridge, you have to do assignments for the PGCE. So we had, in our first term, we had 4 mini assignments, or somewhere average of 1,500 words. In our second term, we had a 4,000 word assignment, and then in our third term, we had an 8,000 word assignment. So it is a lot. And if you find it hard to manage your time, you will struggle. So that's one thing I definitely say is a good skill to have. But overall, I really, really enjoyed it. I think this was one of my favorite years in Cambridge, but for a different reason. I feel like I was able to find out more about myself, because teaching is something everyone thinks they're a good teacher. I'll be honest. The amount of people I've met that think they're a good teacher, it's a lot. But once you're there and you're in front of a classroom, you're like, oh, I'm learning things out about myself. You might learn that you have a short temper. You might learn that you're actually very patient. You might learn that you give a lot of grace. You might learn that you have good relationships. I spent a lot of time by myself and alone, but it was a good thing, because I think I learned so much about myself. The teaching side itself, I loved it the most. Like, my passion is teaching and education. Being in front of a classroom, there's a feeling that you get, especially when you're helping students genuinely learn something, and you can see in their faces that they're understanding this, and they're building that relationship with you, that, you know, they can come to you if they need help, or they can come to you if they're not understanding something. That's a really important feeling that I just don't think you get elsewhere. So that's one of my favorite parts throughout the whole experience teaching. I think being that person that students can come to inside or outside of the classroom for whatever reasons, you know, as a form tutor, that might be what you're doing, or just as a teacher that, you know, they kind of look up to, or they can see themselves in you. I like to think I'm a relatable person to a lot of my students. You know, I'm not old, depends on who you're asking, but a lot of them can see me and like, oh, you know, you're someone that we can talk to, with someone that we can banter with. And of course there's a line that you draw with being responsible and being professional, but it's definitely good. I would definitely say it's a good thing to try and build relationships with students, so they don't just see you as someone who they come to your class just to learn. You know, they want to be there, they want to engage in the learning, they want to do their homework, because, you know, you have that bond and you've built that over the years. Another thing that's good to point out is the amount of support that you get, not just in your university. So as I said, you have a subject lecturer who teaches you a lot of the subject learning and the subject development, but we have mentors as well who are inside our schools. So when we go to our placements, these schools in the middle of nowhere, we have a mentor there that we meet with every week, and you just recap your week, any things that you struggled with, any challenges you had, what went well. You know, we have targets every week. You have different targets. For example, some might be, actually, let me find these targets. All right, I found a good one. So the 16th of May, 2025, one of my targets was to deploy support staff effectively. And the training activity was liaise with teaching assistants to discuss the lesson plan and content, and how they can most effectively support learning in the classroom. So essentially, these tasks are to help you grow as a teacher and experience things that you will experience when you're a teacher. So this target specifically, we had TAs that come into the classroom and help with some students that need more support. And my job as the main teacher is to talk to the TA and say, this is what the lesson is going to be about. This is some points where we're going to break up for some independent work. And this is how you can now come in and help these particular students with the work that they're doing. So these targets are to help me in my relationships with support staff. This is just one example I've picked out of probably dozens we've had over the years, because every week you have 3 different targets. So yeah, your mentor will review these targets with you, and you can see, did you meet them effectively? Is there some things that you can maybe work on a bit more? And you might say, actually, next week, let's still keep the same target, but work on that a little bit more. Let me show you another target. So earlier on in the term, that was the 14th of March, 2025. One of my targets was to create an extension task for both year 7s and year 10s to push the high ability students. And this was on a continued task from the week before. So these targets really help you to plan your lessons with purpose. So it's very easy to just get slides, put them up, and just make sure that the students can understand and get through it and have questions at the end, especially in maths. But when you're actually saying, I need to have these extra tasks, I need to think about how I'm going to work with a TA, I'm going to need to think about how I can develop a repertoire of, you know, tools or tasks, it just makes it very intentional. And that's one thing I like about the way the Cambridge PGCE is structured. So having mentors and that support system is really, really powerful, because again, coming in as a graduate, but now you're going into being this authoritative figure in the classroom, it's difficult. And sometimes you feel lost. Like, I'm fortunate enough I never really felt like I was drowning or I needed help or it became too much. But I know some people did. But there's support systems in place that allow you to deal with it and move on in any way you can. And again, we was in Cambridge. I did my undergraduate in Cambridge. So before this year, I was there from 2020 to 2024. And then again, I just finished my last year from 2024 to 2025. So being in Cambridge, I still experienced all of the lovely things I had during my undergrad. So I was part of the Cambridge Powerlifting Club. I was part of different entrepreneurial societies. I was part of the BME Society, the ACS. So there were so many things I was still allowed to be a part of, and that was great. I saw the beautiful architecture. This year I was in Homerton College, so it was different from the 4 years that I spent in King's College. But it just allowed me to get different experiences, different facilities, different canteen, or we call it a buttery, different libraries, different people, different grounds. There was so much to explore, and it still felt new. It's not like, oh, I'm just having another year in Cambridge. I'm doing the exact same things. I met so many different people that I've never seen before, So being in Cambridge itself, I was still able to explore new parts of the city. And I loved it. I loved that part of it. Now, some of the challenges. I can't say I didn't have challenges. Everyone has challenges. It just depends how big or small they are. I would say time management, it wasn't a big challenge for me, but there was points where I definitely felt like, damn, this is a lot. Like, how do I balance my time? There was some weeks where, I have to plan all my lessons and I haven't finished yet. I need to post some content, but I still need to get to the gym. And I was just focusing on how am I gonna balance this. And when it comes to planning lessons, it was a lot, especially towards the end where we had about 15 hours of teaching a week, and my classes were 100-minute lessons. So I needed to make sure I have enough content for all my classes. So, it could get a lot. I feel like I still managed it well, but it definitely is something to be mindful of. And at points, it was a bit shaky. Other things was about behavior management. I was never a very shouty teacher. I still don't think I will be a shouty teacher. But there was definitely points where you need to put your foot down and say that this behavior can't run, or this isn't acceptable. Because especially if one thing I think young teachers do is be too lenient. You cannot be these students' friends. You can be cool with them, you can build nice relationships, but if you want to be buddy and, friends, it's just not going to work. All of the rules that the school set in place, you're messing it up for the other teachers if you just let students get away with things. That is a big problem that I see young teachers doing. So don't be afraid to put your foot down and say, this is not running in the classroom. There's rules for a reason. Don't think because you're young, because you want to be the likable teacher or make friends, or you don't want to get on their wrong side, that you have to let things slide or, turn a blind eye. No, you're a teacher. At the end of the day, you're there as the responsible figure. You're there as the authoritative figure. You have to be the one in charge. You can't let anything go because, I don't want them to dislike me. So that's my word of wisdom to people that are getting into teaching, especially those that are fresh graduates or coming out of university. Saying that though, I didn't really have much behavior problems when I was teaching. I feel like I was quite lucky in that regard, because people I spoke to, other trainees, they just said it was manic. Like students wouldn't listen to them. They wouldn't sit down. They would talk behind their back. They would, not write in the books when they're being asked to. They wouldn't, and I just never dealt with that. I feel like I didn't deal with any malicious behavior. I didn't deal with any defiant behavior. Of course, there was times where students will have low level disruption and students might, talk out of place. But it's just, I think it's about how you deal with it, because if you deal with it early, it won't keep happening. But if you just tell a student off and you like, I don't want to, you feel a bit uncomfortable to keep addressing it, it's going to keep happening, So I do feel like I was lucky in a sense, but I also feel like I didn't have that repetitive behavior because of the way I addressed it in the first place. And so yeah, I didn't really deal with much bad behavior. Not to say that the schools I was at or the schools that are around don't have bad behavior. Some teachers will tell you that teaching is a nightmare, and the students are just, a nightmare to deal with. But I won't say that. I genuinely had a great experience teaching, and I feel like there's so many students in a short amount of time. For example, my first placement was only from October to end of November, and I really built good relationships with my students. I had some that wrote me cards when I left. And I still think about to this day. I really hope that they do well in their GCSEs, the ones in my form especially. But then my second placement school, I was there for a lot longer. So I was there from January all the way to early June, I want to say. And that one there, because it was a longer period, I built better relationships, I would say. It started off a bit shaky. I feel like my students didn't warm to me the most, especially the ones in my form at the beginning. But over that period of time, when they can start understanding you and getting to know you, and you're not this random guy that appeared in their class randomly after Christmas, they can start to see who you are, and how you teach, and your true personality. So I feel like I really enjoyed that side of things, and that getting to know and foster relationships with the students, because I do think teaching is a very relational thing. They're not looking for someone to just stand up and teach them. And I always say that you can't do this if you hate working with kids. You can't do this if you just want to stand up, teach from the book, teach from the whiteboard, and then send students off. Like, you have to be able to want to build relation. I keep coming back to building relationships, but I'm emphasizing how important it is, because if you want to be a teacher that really makes a difference and really helps students, then that's a key thing you have to remember, or know how to do. In my first placement, I was really just getting to grips with teaching, trying to balance my schedule, make sure I'm teaching well, instead of actually focusing too much on how to deal with intricacies. Now, there's a lot of different aspects to teaching, and a lot of it can overwhelm you if you try to juggle it all at once. So, as I said, we was learning about our subject stuff, we was learning about non-subject and pastoral stuff, and all in our first term, that can really overwhelm someone. So, my first term was mainly just about getting to grips with teaching. I was mainly focused on, can I teach well, rather than can I use the different range or exhaustive range of resources and tasks, or try to differentiate in this kind of way. I was just making sure that I can teach well, I can teach in a confident manner, I can make sure I'm getting my points across in a clear and concise way. These were the fundamental things that I wanted to focus on. So my first placement, I wasn't trying to be as bold or as creative as I could. But in my second placement, that changed, and I really found my teaching style. Because I had around a 6-month period to really perfect my craft, I knew how I like to teach, and I knew the best ways that my students respond to my teaching. So I was able to plan my lessons much more quicker. I was able to make sure I had enough tasks and enough resources planned. And I was able to do more creative and fun activities. I was able to take my students outside. We was doing relay races. We was doing solve the murder mysteries. We was doing so many different ways, but all linked back to our subject of maths. And the students love that. When you can start to explore and be creative in the ways that you're teaching, that's what the students love, and that's how you really start to get them on your side. So that was the differences between my first and second placement. I really just grew as a teacher, and I was able to trust myself more, and my mentors could see it, because they would stop scrutinizing all of my lesson plans in such detail, and they could say, look, we've seen your lessons, we know you're a good teacher, just go off and do it. Of course, they would still give feedback, and feedback is another good thing. Make sure you get good feedback from your mentors, and don't be scared to say if you're not getting detailed enough feedback. If they're just saying, good lesson, good resources, good slides. No, you really need to focus on, what are you doing well? Is there points where your behavior management is not good? Maybe you're turning a blind eye to the low level disruption in the back. Maybe you're too focused on the way you're standing that you can't see students talking or misbehaving over there. Maybe that you're going too fast for your lesson, and you can see that students are not learning. You're not doing enough checks for understanding. So there's so many things that your mentor should be picking up over the course. And I feel like I had really good mentors who were able to tell me, okay, you haven't done enough assessment for learning here. Maybe in your next lesson, you can focus more on that. How can you make sure you know the students are understanding? Because there's one thing teaching, and there's another thing making sure the students are understanding what you're teaching them. And that's what you need to check up on as a teacher. So those are some important things, and it's things that you can progress with over the course of your PGCE. So over the course of my placements, I really started to learn what my teaching style is like. I like more discussion based. I want to bring students in and make them feel almost like it's a collaborative approach, rather than, okay, silence, hands up when you're speaking. Of course, it's still hands up, but I want to bring students in. I want to get their ideas. I want them to bounce ideas off between each other. And that's how, somebody's ideas can help another person rethink the way they are thinking. So that's the kind of teaching style I like. I don't want dead silence. That's what I've learned, because I feel like students are now thinking more about being quiet than about doing the work. So if students are talking between themselves, as long as the volume doesn't get too high, I don't mind it. I'm quite relaxed in my approach. I'm quite stern when I need to be, but I don't really like telling students off in front of the whole class. So if a student is misbehaving sometimes, I might say, do you want to take a few minutes out of the classroom? they'll go outside, I'll go have a quick talk with them, and then they'll calm down and come straight back inside. So it's just making sure that you know what works for you and you are understanding your teaching style. And don't be afraid to say, no, this is my teaching style. Don't let people change your teaching style, you know? All right, so I think it'll be good to give some advice as someone who's been through the PGC to those that are thinking about doing it or have it coming up in September. And the first thing I'd say is once you start your placement, don't be scared to ask for resources. Now, some teachers are very protective over their resources. And what I mean by that is the slides, the materials that they use, the equipment, or what they have planned for a particular lesson. Don't be afraid. If they are, that's fine. That's their own problem. I still never understand why people don't want to share resources. Like, it's not a game. It's not a competition. However, don't be afraid to ask. If they say no, they say no. But you're going to put yourself in a position where you're not going to have to replicate slides or lessons that have already been done. Okay, so when you get to your placement schools, ask, Miss, do you have a slide on probability for year sevens? Or do you have a slide on, distance velocity or anything? It could be anything. It could be even books that you want to read for your class or resources you want to recommend for them. Websites and resources, all of this kind of stuff. Ask your staff, ask your department if they have it. A lot of PGC trainees can go down a rabbit hole of trying to find the best resources, the best slides, creating them, and it just takes a lot of time. What you need to be doing as a teacher is be effective, be efficient. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. It's good to try and make your own resources here or adjust them, but don't spend so long on creating or recreating what's already created, if that makes sense. So that's one thing I wish I knew, because in my first placement, I definitely didn't speak up and ask. But once teachers started offering me, would you like to use this slide? Do you have a lesson on this? I'd be like, oh, you had this the whole time. That means I didn't need to, So another tip I would give is definitely to be proactive. So it's very easy to cruise along the PGC journey. But remember why you're doing this. You're doing this because you want to become a teacher. Okay, I did it because I wanted the qualification, and then I really actually fell in love with teaching over that process. But a lot of people do it because they want to be a teacher. So be proactive in becoming the best teacher. Can you speak to members of your department? Can you speak to senior leadership? Can you find different ways of becoming a better teacher? And what that means is doing things outside of the normal teaching hours. What can you read? Is there any podcast that you can listen to? Is there any extra classes that you can learn? These things aren't essential, but I definitely think that they help, especially if you want to progress in your teaching journey as fast as possible. It's not a rush. You don't have to think of trying to get to SLT as soon as you can or get into, heads of departments. But if you want to, definitely be proactive. Definitely put your foot down and say, look, I'm going to go over and beyond, because that kind of effort is actually recognized by people. So be proactive. As I keep coming back to the workload, try to balance your workload. If you know you're someone that has a lot of different activities or a lot of different endeavors, then try and find a way to balance it. I'm sure that you've been balancing it so far already, but once you get into this teaching lifestyle, it is difficult, okay? You wake up early, sometimes you don't get back until quite late, and you still might have things to do in the evening. You need to cook, you need to shower, you need to go to exercise, you need to do... So you have so many different things you can do, and a lot of your day is taken up by teaching. So learn how to balance it. You're not going to get it perfect initially, but over the time, find out what works for you, and then just try to keep repeating that. I wish I could give some advice on choosing your ITT provider. So that's where you do your PGCE. I did mine at Cambridge University, and that's purely because that's where I went for my undergraduate degree. So I just chose to stay. I wanted to be in Cambridge. I didn't really look at any others. I didn't even give it a second thought, but I know a lot of other universities have a good PGCE program. There's one in UCL, which is the Institute of Education. They're really world renowned, so they're a really good place to do it. But you can do one where it's local to you, a local university or where you did your undergraduate. So have a think, maybe have some comparisons of what they offer or the support, and that's how you can make your choice on where to do your PGCE. Another thing I'd say is be mindful of hearing about too many experiences, because every school is different. And we get 2 placements. So I had one school which was in Hertfordshire, one school which was in Cambridge, and I had very different experiences there, both very positive, but I went through a lot of different things with the teachers, the staff, the tutors, the mentors. So be mindful of hearing what people say and letting that put you off. Someone could have a really bad experience and then they project that and say that teaching is rubbish or this school is rubbish, but be careful, because you will have a different experience based on how you interact with people there. So to wrap up the video, what is next for me? Now that I've finished my PGCE, I'm a qualified maths teacher. I will be starting teaching as a secondary school maths teacher in a school in London. Okay, so I didn't actually think I would, but this is where life has brought me, and I'm very, very excited to start. So I'm going to be starting in September. I'm going to be a full tutor. And I'm just looking forward to it. You know, I've got a year 7 class, I've got 2 year 8 classes, got year 9, got year 10, and got a year 12 class. So I will be teaching A-level maths, which is probably the most exciting bit for me. I want to do more things in the school. So I want to start a strength and conditioning class. I want to help them with their Oxbridge progression because, as you know, I run a company that really focuses on helping the high achievers get into the top institutions. But not just the high achievers, even those that are at that middle level, but I want them to aspire to get to the top. So I want to help them with their Oxbridge progression. I want to help them with their coaching, so personal development, making sure our students have confidence, teamwork, leadership, communication, all of the different soft skills that really shape a human being. And of course, I'm still engaging in all of my other activities. So I'm still going to be powerlifting competitively, still going to be making content, YouTube videos, TikTok, Instagram, everything. Still going to be running my company. And yeah, we'll just see where life goes. I'm really excited to be on the journey I'm at. I feel like I'm very blessed to be able to have all of these things going on. And yeah, I just want to see where we can go. You know, I'm hopefully going to bring you guys on the journey. And if you're liking where I'm going and the messages I'm sending, just keep supporting me, you know. We'll see where it can go, and hopefully it'll be very far to the top. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I covered all of the aspects of the PGC and what my year was. If there's any questions you have, please feel free to drop them in the comments or DM me. All of my social media is in the description, so you know where to find me. But yeah, I've enjoyed making this video. I hope I didn't leave things out, but if I did, again, just let me know. And yeah, just stay tuned for the next video. Apologies for how long this took to get out. I just haven't found time to sit down and record it. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. So let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.